Jake stood in the cargo bay of his newly assigned ship, the Harmony, and wondered how his life had become so complicated. 3 days ago, he had been a simple cargo pilot with a broken hyperdrive. Now he was married to 3 alien women and had been given a diplomatic vessel by the Earth government. The ship was 3 times bigger than his old cargo hauler, with quarters designed for multiple species and technology he did not understand. His 3 wives were exploring their new home, and Jake could hear them moving around in different parts of the ship. Zara's heavy footsteps echoed from the upper deck where she was setting up what she called her training area. Lyra's bubbling experiments could be heard from the science lab she had claimed. Nova moved silently, but Jake could feel her presence like a warm glow wherever she went. The Earth diplomatic team had worked fast. Ambassador Patricia Hayes had arrived on Nexus Prime within hours of Jake's accidental marriage, looking like she had not slept in days. She had explained that his marriage was now humanity's first formal alliance with 3 major galactic powers, and that Jake was being promoted to diplomatic envoy whether he wanted it or not. "Just try not to start any wars," she had said before. Leaving him with a stack of diplomatic manuals and a ship full of confused aliens, Jake walked through the corridors of the Harmony, trying to figure out how to be a husband to 3 beings he barely understood. The ship's computer had been programmed with basic information about each species, but reading about cultural differences was different from living with them. He found Zara in what used to be the ship's gym. She had rearranged all the equipment and was practicing with her energy blades. The temperature in the room was at least 20 degrees higher than the rest of the ship, and Jake started sweating the moment he walked in. "The human approaches," Zara said without looking at him. She spun and sliced through a training dummy with one smooth motion. "Your species is weak. You sweat from simple heat." "It's hot in here," Jake said, wiping his forehead. "Why do you need it so warm?" "Saurians are cold-blooded," Zara explained, finally turning to face him. "We require heat to function properly." "Your ship's standard temperature makes me sluggish," Jake nodded. "Okay, we can work with that." "Maybe we can set up different temperature zones throughout the ship." Zara tilted her head, studying him. "You would change your ship for my comfort?" "It's our ship now," Jake said. "We all have to live here together." Something shifted in Zara's expression. She put away her weapons and stepped closer to Jake. "You are not what I expected from a human." "Male, what did you expect?" "Weakness, cowardice. The report said humans avoid conflict." She gestured to the training dummy she had destroyed. "But you stepped between 3 armed warriors to stop a fight. That took courage." Jake felt his face get warm, and not just from the heat in the room. "I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." "As I said, not what I expected." Jake left Zara to her training and went to find Lyra. The science lab had been transformed into something that looked like an underwater cave. Tanks of water lined the walls, and strange plants that seemed to glow with their own light grew in every corner. The air was humid and smelled like the ocean. Lyra was floating in a large tank, her blue skin shimmering as she moved through the water. She saw Jake and swam to the edge of the tank. "Human Jake," she said, her voice echoing strangely in the humid air. "I apologize for the changes to your ship. My people require aquatic environments to remain healthy." "It's fine," Jake said, though he was starting to worry about the ship's life support systems. "How long can you stay out of water?" "Several hours if needed, but I become uncomfortable. My gills need moisture to function properly." She gestured to the slits on her neck. "I hope this does not cause problems for our union." Jake thought about the heating system Zara needed and the humidity controls Lyra required. "We'll figure it out." "What are you working on?" Lyra's face lit up with excitement. "I'm studying the ship's systems. Your human technology is primitive, but elegant, simple solutions to complex problems. I find it fascinating." "Primitive?" Jake asked, feeling a little insulted. "Not in a negative sense," Lyra said quickly. "Your species is young compared to ours. We have had space travel for thousands of years, but you achieve the same results with less advanced technology. It shows great creativity." Jake had never thought of human technology as creative before. "Thanks, I guess." "You are welcome." I'm also studying you. Me? Yes, your species is new to the galactic community. I have read the reports, but meeting you in person is much more informative. You are very different from what I expected. What did you expect? Aggression, violence. The report said humans are warlike. She paused, floating in her tank. But you risked yourself to stop violence, not cause it. Why? Jake thought about it. Because fighting doesn't solve problems. It just creates more problems. Lyra nodded thoughtfully. An interesting philosophy. I would like to study it further. Jake left Lyra to her research and went looking for Nova. He found her in the ship's main corridor. But she was not alone. She was standing with a man Jake had never seen before, a middle-aged human in a medical uniform. Jake, the man said, extending his hand. I'm Dr. Liu, your ship's medical officer. I was assigned to help you adjust to your new situation. Jake shook his hand. I didn't know we were getting a medical officer. The diplomatic team thought it would be wise, given that you're living with 3 different alien species. Each has different medical needs. Nova glowed brighter when Jake approached. Human Jake, I have been learning about your species from Dr. Liu. Your emotions are very strong. My emotions? Yes, you feel guilt, confusion, worry, and something else. Something. Warm. Nova's light pulsed gently. I feed on emotional energy. Your species produces more than most. Jake felt uncomfortable. You're reading my emotions? I cannot help it. It is how my people survive. But I do not intrude on your private thoughts, only the feelings you project. Dr. Liu stepped forward. Nova's people are empaths. They can sense and feed on emotions, but they cannot read minds. It's actually quite helpful for diplomacy. What am I feeling right now? Jake asked. Nova's light dimmed slightly. Overwhelmed, confused, worried about doing the right thing. But also determined. You want to make this work, even though you do not understand it. Jake stared at her. That's pretty accurate. I also sense something else, Nova said softly. Loneliness. You have been alone for a long time. Jake felt his face flush. I've been a cargo pilot for 10 years. It's a solitary job. Not anymore, Nova said, and her light grew warmer. None of us are alone anymore. That evening, Jake tried to cook dinner for his new family. The ship's kitchen was well equipped, and he had found some ingredients that looked familiar. He made what he thought was a simple stir-fry with vegetables and protein. Zara took one bite and immediately spat it out. This is an insult to my ancestors, she hissed. What's wrong with it? Jake asked, confused. These vegetables are considered sacred by my people. To eat them is to dishonor the dead. Lyra was staring at her plate in horror. My people do not consume solid food. We absorb nutrients from the water around us. Nova was not eating at all. I do not require physical sustenance. I feed on emotional energy. Jake sat down heavily in his chair. So my cooking is religiously offensive biologically? Impossible and completely unnecessary. The intent was kind, Nova said gently. I can feel your desire to care for us. That feeds me more than any food could. Zara nodded grudgingly. Among my people, providing food is a sign of respect. You meant no insult? I appreciate the gesture, Lyra added. Perhaps you could help me understand human customs in return? Jake looked at his 3 wives, each so different from anything he had ever known. This is going to be harder than I thought. Most worthwhile things are, Zara said, and for the first time since he met her, she smiled. Jake woke up to the sound of alarms blaring through the ship. He rolled out of bed and stumbled to the control room, where he found his 3 wives standing around the communication console looking worried. Dr. Liu was there too, holding a cup of coffee and shaking his head. What's going on? Jake asked, still trying to wake up. We have a problem, Zara said, her voice tight with anger. The Galactic Council has issued our bonding requirements. Jake rubbed his eyes. Bonding requirements? Lyra turned to him, her blue skin pale with worry. According to galactic law, newly bonded partners must complete the journey of understanding within 30 days of their union. We must visit each spouse's homeworld and receive approval from their families. That doesn't sound too bad, Jake sighed. Nova's light flickered nervously. The problem is that our three species have been enemies for centuries. The Saurian Empire and the Cetacean Collective have been in a Cold War for over 500 years. The Lumina Confederation considers both our species to be emotionally primitive. Dr. Liu set down his coffee. And if you don't complete the journey, the marriage is automatically annulled. All four of you would be exiled from civilized space. Jake felt his stomach drop. Exiled? Forever, Zara said grimly. No trade, no contact, no help from any galactic civilization. For a cargo pilot, it would mean the end of your career. For all of us, it would mean the end of our lives as we know. Them, Lyra added. Jake looked at each of his wives. They had been getting along well on the ship, but he was starting to understand that their peoples had serious problems with each other. Why are your species enemies? Zara's scales darkened with anger. The cetaceans stole our water rights in the Andromeda sector. They claimed our colony worlds were uninhabitable, then flooded them for their own use. That is not what happened, Lyra said, her voice rising. The Saurians were strip mining those worlds and poisoning the water. We were trying to save the ecosystems. You were trying to expand your territory, Zara shot back. Both of you think with your primitive emotions, Nova said, her light pulsing brighter. You cannot see past your own needs to understand the greater harmony of the universe. Primitive? Zara hissed, her hand moving to her weapons. Harmony? Lyra clicked angrily. Your people hide from reality in their energy forms while real beings suffer. Jake stepped between them before the argument could get worse. Okay. I get it, your people don't like each other. But we're not your people, we're a family now. That is easy to say, Zara said. But the journey requires us to visit each homeworld in person. My people will not allow cetaceans in Saurian space. Lyra's people will not allow Saurians in their territory. And Nova's people will not allow either of us into their realm. So we're stuck, Jake said. Unless we find another way, Dr. Liu said thoughtfully. Jake, what do you know about the ship's holographic systems? Jake shrugged. Basic stuff. They're mainly used for training and entertainment. What if we could use them to create virtual embassies? Dr. Liu suggested. Bring the homeworlds to US instead of going to them? Nova's light brightened with interest. That is an interesting idea. The law requires us to visit each homeworld and receive family approval. It does not specify that we must physically travel there. My people would never accept a holographic substitute, Zara said. Mine either, Lyra agreed. But what if we could make it so real that they couldn't tell the difference? Jake asked. These holographic systems are pretty advanced. If we could scan your homeworlds and recreate them perfectly? His three wives looked at each other. For a moment, Jake thought they might start arguing again. Then Zara nodded slowly. It is worth attempting, she said. But if we fail, we will have wasted time we cannot spare. I will need detailed scans of the ocean cities of SciFiPrime, Lyra said, and permission from the collective to access their databases. The Lumina Confederation exists partially outside normal space, Nova explained. Creating a holographic representation of our realm will be extremely difficult. Jake felt a headache coming on. How long do we have? 26 days, Dr. Liu said, checking his tablet. The clock started ticking the moment you were married. The next 3 days were the hardest of Jake's life. He spent most of his time in the engineering section, trying to understand holographic technology that was decades ahead of anything he had worked with before. The ship's computer was helpful, but it was designed for basic diplomatic functions, not creating perfect replicas of 3 different worlds. Zara worked with him to program the environmental controls for her desert homeworld, the holographic. Desert needed to be hot enough for Saurian comfort, but not so hot that it would kill the others. She also insisted on including the sense of her homeland, which meant Jake had to figure out how to program smell into the holographic system. Lyra flooded half the cargo bay and used it to test the aquatic systems for her underwater cities. The holographic ocean needed to support real water while maintaining the illusion of infinite depth. She spent hours swimming through the test environment, checking every detail. Nova presented the biggest challenge. Her people existed partially as energy beings, and their realm was made of pure thought and emotion. Jake had no idea how to create a holographic representation of something that wasn't really physical. Think of it as a dream made visible, Nova tried to explain. A place where thoughts have form and feelings have color. That doesn't help me program it, Jake said, staring at the incomprehensible code on his screen. Then do not think of it as programming, Nova said. Think of it as creating art. What would hope look like if it were a place? What would peace feel like if you could walk through it? Slowly, Jake began to understand. He stopped trying to create exact specifications and started thinking about emotions as landscapes. Joy became golden meadows. Serenity became still pools of silver light. Love became warm bridges connecting everything together. The three environments began to take shape, but they created new problems. The desert heat from Zara's homeworld evaporated the moisture from Lyra's ocean simulation. The energy fields from Nova's realm interfered with both other systems. Every time Jake fixed one problem, two more appeared. This is impossible, Jake said after 18 hours of continuous work. The environments are too different. They can't exist in the same space. Perhaps that is the point, Dr. Liu said. He had been watching Jake work, bringing him coffee and food. Your three species have never found a way to coexist either. But we have to make it work, Jake said. If we can't complete the journey, we lose everything. Then maybe we need to think differently, Zara said. She had been quiet for the past hour, watching Jake struggle with the systems. What if we don't try to keep our worlds separate? What do you mean? Lyra asked. What if we blend them? Zara suggested. Create something new that incorporates all three homeworlds? That has never been done, Nova said. Neither has marrying three different species, Jake pointed out. His wives looked at each other. Jake could see them thinking, considering the possibility. Finally, Lyra nodded. It would require all of us to work together, she said. Combining our knowledge and skills? Our peoples will not understand, Zara warned. Then we will have to make them understand, Nova said. Her light pulsing with determination. Jake looked at his three wives, each so different from the others, each brilliant in her own way. All right, he said. Let's build something that's never existed before. Jake stood in the center of the most important room in the galaxy, surrounded by beings that could destroy entire star systems with a thought. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in concentric circles that seemed to go up forever. Representatives from hundreds of different species filled the chamber, all of them staring down at him and his three wives. The past week had been a blur of emergency meetings, legal documents, and frantic preparation. Word of Jake's unconventional approach to the bonding journey had spread throughout the galaxy faster than he thought possible. Conservative groups from all three species were demanding that his marriage be declared invalid. Progressive factions were calling it the dawn of a new age of cooperation. The Galactic Council had been forced to call an emergency session to settle the matter. Ambassador Hayes stood beside Jake, looking like she had not slept in days. She had arrived with a team of Earth's best diplomatic lawyers, but even they seemed overwhelmed by the situation. Remember, she whispered to Jake, let us do the talking. Just answer their questions honestly and try not to make any sudden movements. Jake nodded, though he felt like running. The combined holographic homeworld they had created was being displayed on massive screens around the chamber. It looked beautiful to him, a perfect blend of desert heat, ocean depths, and energy fields that somehow worked together in harmony. But he could tell from the expressions on many faces that not everyone saw it the same way. The chief arbitrator, a being that looked like a living crystal, called for order. The Galactic Council will now hear the case of human Jake Patterson versus the traditional bonding laws of the Galactic Collective. A Saurian representative stood up first. He was even larger than Zara, with black scales and scars across his face. The human has violated sacred law, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. He has corrupted the bonding ritual by creating an artificial environment that dishonors our ancestors. The Cetacean Collective agrees, said a blue-skinned alien from across the chamber. This human has shown disrespect for our traditions by refusing to visit our homeworld in person. The Lumina Confederation finds this entire proceeding disturbing, added a being made of pure light. The human's primitive emotions have infected our sacred bonding process. Jake felt his face get hot. He started to stand up, but Ambassador Hayes put a hand on his arm to stop him. "If I may address the council," she said, "Earth wishes to present evidence that Mr. Patterson's actions were not only legal but necessary given the circumstances." The chief arbitrator nodded. "The council will hear Earth's defense." Ambassador Hayes activated a holographic display. "The bonding law requires partners to visit each homeworld and receive family approval. Mr. Patterson attempted to fulfill this requirement but was prevented by the hostility between the three species involved." "That is not our problem," the Saurian representative said. "The law is clear." "The law is also practical," Ambassador Hayes replied. Mr. Patterson found a creative solution that honored the spirit of the law while overcoming impossible obstacles. "Creative?" the Cetacean representative laughed. "He built a fake world because he was too lazy to travel the real ones." That was when Jake stood up. Ambassador Hayes tried to stop him, but he was already moving toward the center of the chamber. "With respect," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space, "that's not what happened at all." The chamber fell silent. Jake could feel hundreds of eyes watching him, waiting to see what the human would say next. "I didn't create that combined homeworld because I was lazy," Jake continued. "I created it because I wanted to understand my wives. I wanted to know what made them who they are, what shaped their thoughts and feelings and dreams." He gestured to the screens showing their holographic world. "Zara's desert taught me about strength and endurance. Lyra's ocean showed me the beauty of depth and flow. Nova's energy realm helped me understand that some things are more than what they appear to be." The Saurian representative snorted. "Pretty words, but you still violated the law, did I?" Jake asked. "The law says I have to visit each homeworld and receive family approval. Well, I visited parts of all three homeworlds. They're all there, in that combined environment. And as for family approval," he turned to look at his three wives. "Zara, do you approve of our marriage?" Zara stood up, her scales gleaming in the chamber's lights. "I do. Lyra, do you approve?" Lyra rose from her water-filled chair. "I do. Nova, do you approve?" Nova's light brightened as she floated upward. "I do. There's my family approval," Jake said to the chamber, "from the people who matter most." The chief arbitrator leaned forward. "That is an interesting interpretation of the law, but it does not address the fundamental issue. The three species represented by your wives have been enemies for centuries. How can we be sure that your marriage will not cause more conflict?" Jake took a deep breath. "Because we've already proven it can work. Look at what we built together." He pointed to the screens again. "My wives could have kept their homeworld simulations separate. They could have maintained their old prejudices and hostilities, but they chose to work together instead. They chose to create something new." "One holographic room does not change centuries of history," the Lumina representative said. "No," Jake agreed, "but it's a start. And if we can make it work, maybe others can too." The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives were arguing in dozens of different languages, some supporting Jake's position, others condemning it. The chief arbitrator called for order several times before the noise died down. "The council will now deliberate," the chief arbitrator announced. "All parties will withdraw while we reach a decision." But before anyone could move, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Emergency lights flashed, and security barriers activated around the council seats. "The chamber is under attack," announced the station's computer. "All personnel take defensive positions." The main doors burst open, and armed figures in environmental suits poured into the chamber. Jake could not tell what species they were, but their weapons were clearly military grade. "No one move!" the lead attacker shouted. This illegal marriage ends now? Jake felt Zara grab his arm, pulling him toward cover. But before they could move, the attackers opened fire. That was when his wives acted. Zara drew her energy blades and charged the nearest group of attackers. Her movements were so fast that Jake could barely follow them. She cut through their weapons like they were made of paper. Lyra somehow created a wall of water that appeared from nowhere, blocking the attackers' shots while her own people emerged. From hidden positions around the chamber, Nova's light exploded outward, blinding the attackers and shorting out their equipment. The energy field she created was so powerful that Jake felt his hair stand on end. In less than 2 minutes, the attack was over. The armed figures lay unconscious on the chamber floor, their weapons destroyed. Jake's 3 wives stood in the center of the chamber, working together like they had been fighting as a team their whole lives. The chamber was silent except for the sound of Jake's heart pounding in his chest. He looked around at the hundreds of representatives, all staring at his wives with expressions of shock and awe. "Well," the chief arbitrator said finally, "I think we have seen all the evidence we need." The crystal being stood up, and its voice carried clearly through the chamber. The Galactic Council finds that human Jake Patterson has not only fulfilled the requirements of the bonding law, but has demonstrated the unprecedented cooperation that his marriage represents. The marriage is hereby validated, and Mr. Patterson is offered the position of Interspecies Harmony Coordinator. The chamber erupted in cheers and applause. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief. His 3 wives surrounded him, each glowing with pride and joy. "We did it," Lyra said, her voice filled with amazement. "We actually did it," Zara agreed, sheathing her weapons. "Together," Nova added, her light warm and bright. Jake looked at his wives, then at the cheering crowd around them. "Yeah," he said, grinning. "We did it together." Jake sat in the captain's chair of the Harmony, watching stars drift past through the main viewport. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council hearing, and his life had settled into something that almost felt normal. Almost being the key word, because normal for Jake now included 3 alien wives, a ship full of refugees, and a job that seemed to get stranger every day. The title of Interspecies Harmony Coordinator sounded impressive, but Jake had quickly learned that it mostly meant flying around the galaxy fixing problems that no one else wanted to deal with. His success at the council hearing had made him famous throughout civilized space, and now every time 2 species had a disagreement, someone suggested calling in the human who married 3 aliens. "Jake," Lyra called from the science station. "We are receiving another distress call. What is it this time?" Jake asked, though he was already getting up from his chair. 2 mining colonies in the Vega system, Lyra reported. The Crystalline Collective and the Silicon Brotherhood are fighting over mineral rights again. Jake sighed. "Rock people fighting rock people over rocks. Why does this keep happening?" "Because they are too stubborn to talk to each other," Zara said from the weapons station. She was officially the ship's security officer, though Jake suspected she mostly took the job so she could legally carry more weapons. "The fundamental issue is communication," Nova added. She was floating near the communication console, her light pulsing gently as she monitored subspace channels. "Both species communicate through vibrations in solid matter. They literally cannot hear each other when they are angry because their emotional frequencies interfere." Jake rubbed his forehead. "So we need to get them to calm down before they can even talk." "Precisely," Nova said. "Set course for the Vega system," Jake ordered. "And somebody wake up Dr. Liu? We might need medical backup if this gets ugly." As the ship changed course, Jake walked through the corridors of his home. The Harmony had changed a lot since his accidental marriage. What started as a simple diplomatic vessel had become something unique in the galaxy. He passed the expanded medical bay where Dr. Liu was treating a family of refugees from the Outer Rim. The war between the hegemony and the free colonies had displaced millions of beings, and Jake's ship had become an unofficial refugee transport. Dr. Liu never complained about the extra work, though Jake suspected he enjoyed having patients from dozens of different species. In the engineering section, Jake found Benny working on the environmental controls. The maintenance droid had gained sentience about 3 months ago, though no one was sure exactly how it happened. Nova thought it was caused by prolonged exposure to her energy fields. Lyra believed it was a natural evolution of the droids. Learning algorithms. Zara just said it was weird and left it at that. "Good morning, Jake," Benny said in his mechanical voice. "I have completed the modifications to Deck 7. The Andromedan family should find their quarters more comfortable." "No." Jake nodded. "Thanks, Benny. Any problems with the temperature regulation?" "Minor fluctuations in the desert section, but nothing that affects habitability. Zara's training sessions are still generating more heat than the system was designed." I'll talk to her about it," Jake said. The truth was, Jake had stopped trying to control what happened on his ship. Between his 3 wives, Dr. Liu, Benny, and the steady stream of refugees and diplomats, the Harmony had become less like a starship and more like a small traveling city. People came and went, problems got solved, and somehow everything worked. He found his wives in the main conference room, planning their approach to the Vega situation. Maps and data streams filled the holographic display, showing the 2 mining colonies and the disputed asteroid field between them. "The Crystalline Collective claims the asteroids by right of first discovery," Lyra was explaining. "But the Silicon Brotherhood says they have a prior claim based on historical migration patterns. Both claims have legal merit under different sections of galactic law," Nova added. "The conflict is not about who is right, but about which law takes precedence." "What started the fighting?" Jake asked. "A silicon miner accidentally broke into a crystalline breeding chamber," Zara said. "The crystallines considered it an attack on their children. The silicons thought they were being ambushed." Jake sat down at the conference table. "So, it's a misunderstanding that got out of hand, the worst kind," Nova said. "Both sides are acting on fear and protective instincts. Their emotions are too strong for rational communication." "What if we separate them first?" Jake suggested. "Get the miners back to their own colonies, then arrange a neutral meeting?" "They will not leave the asteroid field," Zara said. "Both sides believe that abandoning their positions means surrendering their claims." "Then we bring the asteroid field to them," Lyra said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "We use the holographic systems," Lyra explained. "Create a virtual representation of the disputed area. Let both sides examine the evidence without having to physically occupy the same space." Jake grinned. "I like it, but will they trust a holographic recreation?" "Not at first," Nova said. "But if we can get them to focus on the facts instead of their fears, they might be willing to listen." The plan took 3 days to implement. Jake's wives worked together to scan the entire asteroid field and create a perfect holographic recreation in the Harmony's main cargo bay. The level of detail was incredible, down to individual mineral deposits and geological formations. Representatives from both colonies arrived on separate shuttles, each group suspicious of the other and of Jake's motives. The crystallines looked like living gemstones, their bodies made of faceted crystal that reflected light in beautiful patterns. The silicons resembled metallic sculptures, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid metal. "This human thinks he can solve our problems with toys," the crystalline leader said, his voice ringing like wind chimes. "Human solutions are often inadequate," the silicon representative agreed, her voice sounding like grinding gears. Jake stepped between the 2 groups, a position that had become familiar to him over the past 6 months. "I'm not here to solve your problems," he said. "I'm here to help you solve them yourselves." He activated the holographic display, and the entire cargo bay transformed into a perfect recreation of the disputed asteroid field. Both groups fell silent, staring at the detailed representation of their home. "This is your space," Jake said. "Your resources, your future. I don't know anything about mining or crystal breeding or silicon migration patterns, but I do know that you're both intelligent. Species who want what's best for your people." He gestured to the holographic asteroids floating around them. "So let's look at the facts together. Show me where your claims overlap. Explain to each other what you need and why you need it. Maybe we can find a solution that works for everyone. 4. The next 6 hours, Jake watched his wives work their magic. Lyra provided scientific analysis of the mineral deposits. Zara kept the peace when tempers flared. Nova helped both sides understand each other's emotional motivations. Jake mostly asked questions and made sure everyone got a chance to speak. By the end of the day, the two colonies had worked out a resource-sharing agreement that gave both sides what they needed. The crystallines got exclusive rights to the areas suitable for breeding chambers. The silicons got access to the rare metals they needed for their migration ships. The remaining asteroids would be jointly mined, with profits shared equally. How did you know this would work? The crystalline leader asked Jake as they prepared to leave. Jake shrugged. I didn't, but I've learned that most problems look bigger when you're standing too close to them. Sometimes you just need to step back and look at the whole picture. After the delegations left, Jake sat in his quarters with his 3 wives, sharing a quiet meal. Well, as quiet as meals got when one of your wives needed to eat in a water tank, another required high-temperature food, and the third fed on emotional energy. Another successful mediation, Lyra said, floating contentedly in her portable tank. The 53rd this year, Zara added, checking her records. Your reputation is spreading, Nova observed. I can sense hope from beings across the galaxy when they hear your name. Jake looked at his wives, each so different from the others, each brilliant in her own way. Our reputation, he corrected. I couldn't do any of this without you 3. We. No, Zara said with a grin. Obviously, Lyra agreed. The bond between us grows stronger with each challenge we face. Nova added, her light warm and bright. Jake's communicator chimed with another incoming message. He glanced at it and saw 3 more requests for mediation, 2 diplomatic emergencies, and what looked like an invitation to speak at the Galactic University. No rest for the diplomatic, he said, setting the device aside. Do you regret it? Lyra asked quietly. This life is nothing like what you planned. Jake thought about it. 6 months ago, he had been a simple cargo pilot with a broken-down ship and no prospects. Now he was married to 3 alien women, captain of a diplomatic vessel, and apparently one of the most famous humans in the galaxy. No, he said finally, I don't regret any of it. I still don't know what I'm doing most of the time, but I've learned that's okay, as long as we're doing it together. Nova's light pulsed with contentment. Ed. Again. Dr. Amy Foster stared at the computer screen, her eyes burning from exhaustion. She had been working for 18 hours straight, analyzing the quantum signatures from every failed test humanity had endured. The patterns were there, hidden in the data, but they were unlike anything she had ever seen before. The explosion at Luna Station created a specific resonance frequency, she explained to Dr. Lisa Manning, who had rushed to the laboratory after. Amy's urgent call. When our quantum device failed, it didn't just destroy itself. It left an imprint in the quantum field around Earth. Lisa looked at the complex equations covering Amy's screens. Mathematics had never been her strong point, but she could see the excitement in Amy's eyes. What kind of imprint? Think of it like an echo, Amy said, pulling up another display. When you shout in a canyon, the sound bounces off the walls and comes back to you. Our quantum explosion created an echo in space-time itself, and that echo is now part of the quarantine barrier. Dr. Peter Grant arrived just as Amy was explaining her discovery. Peter had been analyzing the barrier's energy patterns from the space station, and his findings supported Amy's theory. The barrier isn't just a wall, he said breathlessly. It's a complex energy matrix that incorporates quantum signatures from multiple sources. And some of those signatures are definitely from our failed tests. The 3 scientists worked through the night, cross-referencing data from every disaster humanity had experienced during the assessment. The terraforming failure had created unique atmospheric particle combinations. The diplomatic incident had generated psychological stress patterns that registered on alien sensors. Even the ethical test had produced decision-making signatures that the Council's computers had recorded. We weren't just failing tests, Lisa realized. We were unconsciously gathering intelligence about their technology. Every failure taught us something about how their systems work. Dr. Joe Parker, the facility's chief mathematician, joined the team the next morning. Joe had been working on theoretical models of the barrier's structure, trying to find weaknesses that might allow human ships to escape. What he discovered changed everything. The barrier is powered by a network of quantum processors, Joe explained, showing them a three-dimensional model of the energy field. These processors maintain the barrier's integrity by constantly adjusting its frequency to match any object trying to pass through it, but they're not perfect. They have computational limits. Emma Davis, the facility's top computer specialist, understood immediately. If we could overload their processors with too many calculations, we might be able to create gaps in the barrier. Exactly, Joe said. But we'd need to generate quantum signatures that their computers can't predict. Random patterns that would force the processors to work harder and harder until they fail. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. The signatures from our failed tests aren't random. They're based on human decision-making patterns, human creativity, human chaos, things that follow our logic, not theirs. Over the following weeks, the team worked in secret. They couldn't let the council know what they were discovering, so they disguised their research as routine barrier analysis. Commander Jake Sullivan provided security and resources, while Dr. Helen Wade helped them understand the quantum mechanics involved. The breakthrough came when Emma discovered something remarkable about the council's technology. Their systems are incredibly advanced, she reported, but they're also incredibly predictable. Every process follows strict logical patterns. There's no room for improvisation or creativity. Gary Lewis, a tech specialist who had joined the team, expanded on Emma's findings. Look at their ship designs, their energy patterns, even their communication protocols. Everything follows mathematical rules. They've optimized for efficiency, but they've eliminated unpredictability. Dr. Grant realized the implications first. They can't understand human decision-making because we don't follow their logical patterns. When Captain Johnson chose to save the refugees instead of the research station, he made an emotional decision that their computers couldn't predict or process. And when our quantum device exploded, Amy added, it created a resonance pattern based on human engineering approaches. Their systems recorded it, but they don't understand what it means. The team began conducting careful experiments using the quantum signatures from their failed test to probe the barrier's weaknesses. They discovered that the barrier responded differently to each signature, sometimes strengthening, sometimes showing brief fluctuations. The terraforming disaster signature causes the barrier to shift frequency, Joe reported. It's trying to compensate for atmospheric disturbances that aren't actually there. The diplomatic incident signature creates psychological interference, Emma added. The barrier's sensors think they're detecting emotional stress patterns and adjust accordingly. Lisa began to see the bigger picture. Every failure we had during the test left a unique signature in their systems. And now those signatures are part of the barrier itself. We're not trying to break through a wall built by aliens. We're trying to break through a wall that we helped build. The most important discovery came when they analyzed the strategic test failure. The simulation had recorded every human tactical decision, every unpredictable maneuver, every moment of creative chaos that had characterized their desperate defense. The Council's computers are still trying to process our battle tactics, Gary explained. They recorded everything, but they can't understand why we made the choices we did. Our human logic doesn't fit their mathematical models. Dr. Foster made the final connection. The barrier isn't just powered by their technology. It's powered by their understanding of our technology, but they don't really understand us at all. They've created a prison based on their assumptions about human behavior, and those assumptions are wrong. The team realized they had been looking at the problem backwards. They weren't trying to escape from an alien prison. They were trying to escape from a prison built using misunderstood human concepts. Every failed test had given the Council more data about humanity, but that data was filtered through their logical, predictable thought processes. "We need to think like humans," Lisa said, echoing General Collins' words from the strategic test. "Not like the Council thinks humans should think, but like we actually think." Emma began developing a plan. "If we can generate the right combination of quantum signatures, we might be able to confuse their processors enough to create a gap in the barrier. We'd need to coordinate multiple sources, create overlapping patterns that force their computers to work beyond their limits." "It's not about breaking the barrier," Amy realized. "It's about making the barrier break itself trying to understand us." The plan would require precise timing and coordination across multiple locations. They would need to recreate the quantum signatures from all their failed tests simultaneously, creating a cascade effect that would overload the Council's processors. But as they prepared for their escape attempt, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something important. The Council had been observing galactic civilizations for thousands of years. They had seen countless species rise and fall. Why had they made such fundamental errors in understanding humanity? The answer would come soon enough, but first they had to break free from their prison and show the galaxy what humans could really do.